Welcome to The Collective, where every conversation ignites a new perspective. Join us as we delve into the journeys of remarkable individuals, explore the art of growth, resilience, and the power of a shared mission as we strive to be better together. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. I am stoked. We got Tip returning. Yohance got called away, so he'll be in when he can. But we haven't talked to Tip since January 1 of this year, so I'm stoked that he is back here. And while I am stoked, y'all should be too. Do the things, like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bells, do all that good stuff. Get your emails when we go live, which of course, Fridays for The Collective, Wednesdays for The Gold Mine. And if you haven't yet, make sure you are signed up for the Reinforcement Loop. That is our weekly newsletter. It goes out every Sunday, and that way you can stay in the loop with everything Collective. Other than that, if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, put them up in the comment section. We can hit those throughout the show. And yeah, Tip, man, it's been a while. How's things going?
There's no chance I'm there. I was just like, it's obviously been quite a while, but just your intro, I'm going, I haven't seen that before. That looks really cool. And I've been watching it. And I thought, why haven't I picked up on that yet? And then your intro on the speed of that, I'm going, my God, when I first came on your show donkeys moons ago, we were just like playing it. Now it's so slick. It's unbelievable. You're blowing me away, man.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's been a lot of jibing from Shaun, mostly, that's gotten me to this point. And the intro just slides off the tongue now. It's pretty sweet. I'm liking it. Shaun, how's the drop zone?
Shaun's it's great out here. Sorry about that. It's great out here in Campbell River, of course. The troops are all crushing it out there. We've got better weather today. It's a little cooler, so not as much thermal at elevation. But I just want to play off of what Tip just said right now, because he's right. Chance's intro is freaking slick as snot, and he's dialed up that game. And maybe I might have had a few things to say along the way to get it there. But honestly, it's but honestly, it's all chance. And that elevation of his game is precisely what we should be doing over here, because we have such amazing guests. It would be, it'd almost be a disservice to not try to represent them properly at their sort of level of awesomeness. So it's our job to dial up the game to match the guests that we have on this kind of show.
Agreed. And I think it stemmed from one of the initial questions you asked me, actually, and it goes into the conversation we're going to have in a second, was you asked me if I wanted to be a professional. And I was like, yeah, I feel like I am a professional. And you were like, no, you're not. But it made me, as a professional, start to observe the things that I was doing. How do I do this better? How do I make it more professional? How do I make it more seamless? How do I make it tighter, cleaner, all these things? And it would just stem through that question to be able to observe what I was doing and then create what I am doing now. So it's all part of the process, which I'm digging. And I want to get right into the conversation, because you guys have a history in this, especially from the acting side, Tip, and from all the different, like the high performance coaching side, Shaun, observing, seeing the world, doing all these things. So what is your guys' first thoughts? What were the things that sprung into your head when we heard this topic? Tip, what do you got?
Well, for me, when I seen it, you said just the thing, right, this is what we're talking about. This will be, about observation and things. And straight away was that was one of the reasons from early days joining the Royal Marines was to be in reconnaissance, and everything is fundamental. And that is being able to observe, accumulate, retain knowledge, and also assess things down to minuscule, observing, different things on different types of vehicles, what type of antennas would do different things. So it's always about those observational skills, sniping and stuff as well. All those things, the importance of observations. But when I first done it on operations, the surveillance side of things and observing, we were doing a lot with, obviously, sort of like sniper scopes, binoculars, that type of stuff. But also moving on to recording stuff was with cameras and wet film and maybe infrared film. And then you think fast forward, that's when I that was the magical sort of covert world when it started. So when I finished, you've got global iStar. You're speaking to aircraft that's got so many magical platforms of capabilities that can sniff out, see, do everything from the sky and the digital world. And it's just mind blowing how that step change in my small lifetime, a professional lifetime in the Corps, how it changed. Moving on from there and becoming an actor, then it was just, it's everything. Everything's about observation, picking things up. Listening's a very big part of observing as well, I'd say as well. So really, it's been my whole life.
And I hadn't even thought about the physical, technological leaps in observation. That's a freaking great point, Shaun. You got what were your first thoughts?
Very much like Tips. Right from a young age, I've observed the world with a keen eye and a curious mind, and so it isn't just simply observing the world; it's observing it with a curious aspect, wanting to understand things beyond the surface level. So, this veneer of the world that is in front of us that, some people see and some people don't. Maybe they're walking down the sidewalk zombie style, not even observing anything. Irrespective of that, most people observe the world at a really surface level. And that's got nothing to do with formal training per se. And I'm sure we'll launch into that deeper into the podcast. But I do believe it's something that perhaps you're born with, a curiosity about the world. But if you're not born with it, it can certainly be taught to you. And I feel that it's kind of almost a disservice to the general public that these kind of things or these kind of discussions or these kind of ideas aren't considered within public schools as a kid is coming up, how to actually see beyond the veneer of the world with a curious mind and explore a little bit deeper into why does that apple shine that particular way with the sun glancing off it, and what is causing the shadow, and just the minutia of the world starts to appear over time, but the minutia won't appear unless you start engaging with a more deeply curious mind.
I wonder, and this just clicked in my head here, is that I wonder if it has to do with the quickness of answers. Because I remember being in school at a very young age, and to your point, Shaun, when you're younger, when you're in the beginning, like very junior elementary schools, grades 1, 2, and 3, they ask a lot of questions. Oh, why do you think you're doing this? And why do you think that is? And how do you... But as you age through the school system, at least here in Canada, there's a required answer. There's no longer questions being given to you. It's, there's no longer open-ended questions being given to you. There's questions being given to you that have a specific answer. So you find that answer and you don't have to be curious anymore. I wonder if that has something to do with it. Tip, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, everything Shaun was saying there, I can't help it from my childhood, exactly what you were saying though, from my childhood and my education. But when I was growing up in Belfast, it was during the Troubles, and your observation and your hunger for getting everything, for getting that knowledge about the world and the existence, it was always there. But because of the sort of strife in Ireland, in that part of Ireland at the time, it was just, you felt like you were the bit like the center of the universe, which is completely wrong and not right. But because you didn't think, in those days, remember, there was no satellite TV, there was none of this, there was about 3 channels on the telly and that sort of stuff. So you really did feel that you were the center of the universe and this was normality. So you were observing troops on your streets, and you would hear gun battles and that sort of things when you were young growing up. But all those observations meant you were sort of like the focal point, which is wrong, and you didn't have that ability to reach out and learn, I don't think. But a lot of people do break the mold, and I think that is such a healthy thing for any young human being to enable them to give it. Because even when it leans on to what you were saying, like, chance about you've got to answer or find the specific answer required, it's far better when you sort of generate the interest to find that answer rather than being told you have to find the answer. And I think our adventures or our life, the life experience we've had, have allowed us a lot more understanding of what observation of human beings as human beings, of knowledge, of everything, just life in general, that you know, that observation, we've got a far more, I think, less blinkered view of what that world is about. And I think simple things like, you know, before, when you're on operations, that those hairs in the back of your neck, that's an observation. You know, that's the old presence of the abnormal, absence of the normal, or vice versa. You know, you're like that going, right, what is wrong with this here? Why am I feeling that? Why has nature told me that? Is there something else? Is there a higher being telling me that? You know, so that's all observation points, but we've had all that experience. So when it comes back into, to we say, day-to-day running and the wonders of our societies, I think we've got so much to put in there and give it, and to generate that, you know, that healthy learning for young people to go, like, go and have the magic, be safe, but have the magic. Get out there, open your mind, ask these things. Everything Shaun said, it's all important. So I'm like, you know, everything we're speaking about now, I could go on forever. It's brilliant.
This is the beauty of this conversation, especially, and Shaun said it earlier, is that just having you on the show, just in general, is we can hold a conversation.
Sorry, it's a bit mad.
No. It's all good. It's that ability to move along with these conversations that I love. And to your point, that ability to observe and kind of like pushing as parents to like try to get your kids to like, yeah, explore the world, like be safe, but explore the world as best you can in all things, especially the observational side. Just like pay attention to the world around you. Shaun, you got any thoughts?
I do. A couple of thoughts. One is we're actively observing right now in this conversation, and we're observing many things. At least I am, and I'm sure you guys are. We're looking for the micro movements. We're looking for the posture, the tone, how a person's sitting, how a person is breathing, how they're blinking, how they're relaxed, how they're not, whatever the case is. That's what we do. We pay attention to the details. We generally speaking, pay attention to the invisible details. And that's through a lifetime of paying attention to the obvious details until the invisible appears. And so I find at my age now, having lived the life that I've lived, probably similar to Tip in the sense of more or less an obligated requirement to observe at a deeper level. I just find it very organic and natural. In fact, it feels a bit awkward if I'm not paying attention to what's going on around me in real time. And by paying attention, I don't mean like sweating the details. I mean, the details are obvious to me. I find it quite easy now to walk through the world and understand it relatively easily, unlike when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And so when I was a kid, that's right. When I was a kid, like Tip, I grew up in the UK. I grew up in Yorkshire, and the town that I grew up in is Barnsley, and it was a bit tough back then. And so, and my parents, or I've got a bunch of family in Northern Ireland. My mom still lives in Omagh County, Tyrone. I've been over to Ireland a bunch of times during the Troubles, and so as a kid. And now I was never really under any threat as a kid in Northern Ireland, but I felt the world around me at that time. Like I was quite empathic. I feel the world quite easily. And so I could feel kind of what was the tone around the corner, even though I didn't understand why. I could understand what was going on around me. And it was Northern Ireland, particularly as a kid, that helped me understand the delta between living in Yorkshire and then being in Omagh County, Tyrone. As an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 13-year-old. And so whether I was ever under threat or not is neither here nor there. I felt that the game had elevated itself when I was in Northern Ireland as a kid, which meant that I had to pay even more attention. And so it was one of the first times that I realized that observation isn't just seeing the world, it's feeling the world. And I think that, Omagh County, Tyrone and Barnsley, Yorkshire, as a young boy, taught me the difference between the two. Now, why was I paying such close attention? Because it was tough growing up as a kid in Barnsley. And I'd walk to school and if you weren't running, being chased, then you were looking down the back alleys or whatever. So that, you had to pay attention back in the day. And so it didn't wire me for threat recognition. It just wired me to pay attention, and more correctly, trying to understand why I was feeling what I felt about the world, threat, no threat, whatever the case is, but not having the data collection ability to make sense of it. And so finally, I'll wrap it up with this. As Tip said, from a young age till today, informally, I started to learn how to observe the patterns in the world. But then further on into my life, I was formally trained to observe patterns in life. And I'm talking about patterns of human movement, patterns of human breathing, patterns of nature, patterns of cities, patterns of vehicles, all the patterns. Eventually, I started to understand the patterns of the world that allowed me to offload just purely observing, and quite frankly, allowed me to expand into a more feeling-based observation of the world. I hope that makes sense.
I dig it. And I like this concept of feeling rather than just seeing, because there's lots of people that just see. Like, you can, when you look around town, wherever you are, there's lots of people that are they're seeing their phone, they're seeing the street, they're seeing whatever there's in front of them, but they're not really paying attention to anything. And so I guess the question I have for you is it more about then how we interpret what we see? Because we're all looking around, people can see the world. Would it be fair to say that it's more, I guess, more important issue is to interpret in a better way, more dedicated way? What do you guys think, Tip?
I think you used a good word there. You said interpret, and I'm like, and it's another one. This is another one. It could be controversial, or judge. You judge that observation. You pick it up. You interpret, or is it you judging? Are you allowed to judge? You know, I mean, it's one of those. It's a contemporary word. Are you judging me? You know, that sort of thing. But all I'm saying is, people watching, exactly what Shaun said, people watching to me in my new career and what I do is wonderful. Honestly, I can walk out the door here in sunny southwest of England and sit and watch people go past, fishermen working on boats, and I just go, I love that. I love watching that. I love, as an actor and a creative, going, what's that? What are they up to? How's that there? The way their body language when they deal with each other, two fishermen or a grandmother like walking with a grandson or something out there. All these things, just watching the whole of life, just moving past you by and watching them, watching the body language, watching young lovers looking at each other like, those longing eyes, watching people like, that you can just say, oh, there's been a bit of a fall. And you can just tell by the movement, by their body language, by they're observing it, or if they're on their phones and they're in a different world. Just all these things, I love it. And it also creates stories and going, right, what's happening there? How could we create something to move more and more? Am I judging these people? I mean, do you judge them on their, they need a bit more exercise? They don't need exercise. Why are they out running? They're like, there's just all things that you don't judge or you interpret, but observation is life. Observation is life. Listening is life. And it's important. And like Shaun said, it's bringing it back, all the things that I picked up in my military career into my acting world, but also into my sort of life in society now. I love it. I love having been trained the way I'm trained, but also it's opened so many doors to understanding people just by observing as well.
I'm digging where this is going. Shaun, what do you got?
Yeah, I got no issues with the word judging. In fact, I'm going to use another controversial word perhaps. And what I do is I profile, and I profile in a split second. I will take a look at something, whether it's two lovers, two haters, two whatever, whether it's a fisherman by himself or it's a cat trying to find its owner. It doesn't matter to me. What I do is I profile instantly. And within that split second, then I'll take another several seconds. And the profile is a feel, not a perhaps a judgment. It's a feel. So that's why I'll call it a profile. And then within the next few seconds, I'll start building out my backstory on what is going on. I'll start building out who they are, where they came from, why they're there, where they're going next. Why did they choose what they're wearing? What's up with those shoes? I noticed that shoelace is untied. So that means that perhaps they're either sloppy, not paying attention, or maybe they're making a statement, or I just build out a story. And I think it's a fascinating aspect of observing something is introducing a story into what you see. And you don't have to turn it into a science fiction story. It doesn't have to be a fantasy story. The story is based on the reality of the moment as you perceive it. And unless you're building out these stories about the moment in front of you, right there in front of your face, then now what are you counting on? What are you relying on? What is your world view on things if you're not observing the world and building out at least a semi-structure that you can then start evaluating true or false or correct or wrong or good direction, bad direction? How do you line up your instinctual first read into that is a disconnect from the true reality of what's going on? And so I've found that my instant profile is my instinct. My second build out within the next couple 3 seconds is the judgment or the story building. And I always build a backstory on someone. And I find it to be like, I'll play the game with anyone. If Tip and I are sitting down in a seaside place somewhere southern England, I know that the two of us could sit on a park bench and watch the world walk by, and we'd have a hell of a good time assessing and comparing our backstories to see what was with the undone shoelace. What do you make of that? Mm-hmm. And so I think what I'd like to suggest is that, you know, these are things that I believe are important to do in your life. But the moment that you realize that you're starting to do it enough that you're getting closer to the truth of the matter, then it can kind of become a bit of a fun game. And I don't mean game in the sense of a laugh, but I mean, if you've got the right person with you, the game of comparison or the game of what do you think that's all about? Hey, what's going on over there? It's a great way to not only understand your own sense of the moment, but understand the other person's sense of the moment. And more often than not, it's a hybridized sort of assessment of, yeah, I see what you're saying. You see what I'm saying. This is probably what's happening. And it's now a learning moment. So if you can't sit next to someone and compare backstories on what's happening, then how are you then sort of kind of keeping your own perspective in check as to how close it is to reality?
And this goes into, it almost brings up deductive reasoning, in that you have to be able to not only create the backstory, but then figure out why that backstory is happening to begin with. So you have like lore at that point. When you start looking at people, there's depths to your observations. But this is, and I think the critical point in what you're talking about, Shaun, is that you build a profile, but that profile is not static. So in an instant, yeah, I can come up with okay, that's happening. Yep, those people are probably like that. But then 2 seconds later, things could change completely, and you're, okay, that makes more sense. I have more information. You can update that profile. And so the word profile, I think, has a bad connotation to it, or a negative connotation to it, because of people taking a static profile. This is how you were. This is how you always be. Done. And then never have to update that thing. But I think part of observation, of continual observation, or the fact that our topic is observing in the present sense, that is, it has to be a continual aspect. You have to always be observing. You can't just observe and go, cool, call it a day, and walk away done.
I mean, Chancey, with that as well. No, that not the continual observing, which again, I complete everything you say. It's bang on. The thing is, because we're lucky in a way, because we grew up in a time before the smartphone, before, you know, everything. So that, the observation, so that instant picture with no depth in it, but the picture gives a dubious sort of like message, because it's put in whatever sort of thing, you know, not being political, not anything, just a dubious message. And there's a judgment made on that picture, but there's no depth in that. There's no depth from the story, where that picture arrived, how it got to, and what's in it. But in a lot of things today, people hang on that image, even though they haven't got the context, the depth, what it's about, or where it's going. And that's an important thing. So you have to be continually observing, and not, especially, and I don't do it, because I think it's just madness, you know, with social media and the pressures on young people with social media. They go straight onto their phone and make comments about it and everything else. And they're obviously, as soon as you do that, you're documenting something. You're making an observation which is incorrect. You haven't thought about. You're firing from the hips. Just think about it. And I'm an old git now. That's why I am. But I was a young Marine. Young, dumb, and full of whatever. It was just wonderful. But imagine if that had been smartphones. The historically humorous things that I used to get up to. My God, they were devastating. Because it's nowadays. It's just the judgmental, being judged instantly from an image with no depth in it it's just bonkers, but it happens. And that's not what you were saying, because you've got to continually observe, understand, and even sort of like empathize, or even be apathetic in a lot of ways as well towards these things.
So I'm going to hit back on this one, and then I want to go to Shaun on this too. But I think also it has to do with the fact that there's an emotional attachment, right? Like all of the stuff that we did as kids when we were young privates in the Army, they're probably some pretty crazy stories. And in the moment, there was an emotional attachment to them still. Like they sucked, or they were hilarious, or they were whatever it was. But over time, you start to gain this kind of emotional bandwidth, I guess, and there's no longer such an attachment to that thing that they become funny stories. Right, like the moment I got a scar on my forehead when I was overseas, and I ran headlong into the back of a backhoe, like the bucket, full sprint, smashed my head right off it. In the moment, that was horrible. Like I felt horrible. Now I wish I had video of it, because I don't have the emotional attachment to it anymore. And whereas with social media, like you're talking about, that emotional attachment gets stuck to it, and then anybody that makes a comment on it stays there, and then that attachment never leaves, so it doesn't become a funny story later. It's still that horrific scar in whatever I was feeling at the moment. What do you think? I'm going to come back to you, Tip, and then we'll hit Shaun.
I mean, I do understand it, and I understand you've captured the moment as such, but it's again, it's the context of the whole environment. You building up why that happened, everything else. That's the story. That little Snapchat would be on a Snapchat or on some sort of social media, just that. And it doesn't give the depth to it. Doesn't give the depth of who you are, but people will message, judge, and do whatever. And even I just think it's lost the value of that little moment in time. Yeah, I think.
Oh, I like that. Shaun, what do you got?
Well, if we're talking social media world, it's tricky. If we're talking the real world, it's tricky, but in a different way. And so if you were never taught to observe the real world, then it's not that easy. But if you were never taught to observe the social media world, well, it's not that easy. And I found myself that the real world is really quite easy for me. The social media world is really quite difficult. And it's because I'm a bit of a noob to it. And so, someone actually described me today on the drop zone this morning. And he's known me for quite a long time. And he's been observing me on the drop zone over the last few days. And he's noticed that, if I shake a hand and then I start talking with someone, irrespective of how long it lasts, 5 minutes, 50 minutes, it's unimportant. I'll say, nice meeting you, or dude, it was so great to see you, or come in for the big hug, or whatever the case is. And when that moment wraps up, I'll turn 90 degrees or 45 degrees and take 2 steps over here, and bam, the next person is right there next to me. We're having a chat. And so I described it to a friend this morning as, within a couple of hours, I might move 25 feet on the DZ in a small square of dust, because it's just conversation after conversation after conversation. And I'm there for it. I love it, man. I love learning about the person in front of me. I love the interaction of the real world. And so he was observing me doing this, and he said to me this morning, I've noticed that you have changed to some degree. And I said, oh yeah, how's that, Hank? And he said, well, you always used to be a good leader, but now you're trying to mentor and lead at a different level than I was aware of. but I've seen it happen hour after hour after hour here on the DZ since you've been here. And it's really nice to see. It's really nice to see what you're emanating and representing, and you're the right guy for the job. And so, you know, the observation aspect, as we're observing the world, engaging in the world as we do, the world is also observing us. And so if I'm standing on that drop zone, just chirping, but being uncool about it, I'm being judged, I'm being profiled, I'm being assessed. And I think an important aspect of that is, and I'm not suggesting anyone be inauthentic. I'm simply suggesting, as you're being authentic, just remember there's eyes on you, and try to be cool in the moment. Don't try to be such a grump. Don't try to be uncool. Try to be cool. And if you're authentically cool, that's even better. But if you're just early into the game of being in the actual real world and eyes are now on you, try to relax and try to be yourself and try to have a bit of fun with the moment, and no need to turn it into a comedy act. But, you know, there's great value in having a quick, witty, zippity-doo-dah back and forth conversation where it's a bit of poking, a bit of fun, a bit of teasing, a bit of mocking, a bit of laughing, not mean-spirited, but just getting everyone at ease in the moment with an authentic sense of joyfulness, the curiosity of where the conversation will go, not being overly dogmatic or stern or corrective, but just simply allowing a fun moment to exist in the world where you both gain from it. And so he commented on this, that he's seeing me do that. And he's right, because I love it. Now, when I was a kid, or when I was when I was a young soldier, that wasn't really my jam, because I had so many things to figure out. You know, I was a bit of a dimwit to some degree as to how the world works. But I've been around the world enough times now that I know how it works for me. And so when I'm interacting with the world in the actual world, I do it way better than I do in social media. So to Tip's point, if I put things up on social media, I never feel like it's a proper representation of who I am, because I'm a much more complex or deeper or broader minded person than a simple photo represents.
Now, do you think that is because of the fact that you've taken the time to observe yourself over time? Because that's, I mean, we've been talking a lot about the external side of it, of like observing the world and seeing what's happening. But I think that the only way you can do that is to take the time to actually look backwards at yourself, to actually view yourself as a kind of in a science experiment, right? Like, if I do this, then I can do that. And if I do that, oh, no, that was wrong. Okay. And then I can do another thing. I was talking to somebody on the mats the other day, and yes, I brought up jiu-jitsu right away. But I was talking to him, and he was like, oh man, I keep doing this thing wrong. I'm like, relax, man. You're going to do it wrong again. But it's the ability to observe when you've done it wrong. The ability to go, oh, yep, that was a mistake, and then adjust, versus making the same mistake over and over and over again. And that's the guy that would show up to a party or at the DZ and act a fool with all the people around. Like, they've made that mistake, but they just don't care. They're not going to change at all. I think that has something to do with it, at least. Tip, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, to me, as the whole reflection is so important about anything we do in life. So with observation, you've got reflection, anything you do. So, you know, if you're an instructor or a leader or anything, whenever you achieve an evolution or an operation or a mission or a parachute jump or anything you do, you have time to reflect. You know what I mean? Especially if you're having to give lectures, perform, do something, you have to reflect and go, right. And you can feel the energy sometimes yourself. And when you're giving something, it is a performance, but you're lecturing. You've got to be on point. You've got to have your knowledge. You've got to be the SME of whatever you're delivering at the time. And then you need a moment afterwards to reflect and maybe even speak to people who you trust peer-wise to be part of that reflection. I think that's important. So whatever observations you make, that you have other people maybe to support or, you know, enforce what you've observed as well. So, or reflected on. I think they're very important.
I like that. I was actually talking to my massage therapist about this earlier today, and the fact that there are people's opinions that I respect and I want, and those people's observations of me help me understand me better, at least, versus not having those opinions. But I don't put those opinions as gospel, right? They're just added information. They're new things that I can observe about myself. Shaun, what are you thinking?
Well, on that note, I just want to say that there's a number of people who've approached me on the drop zone over the last few days that have spoke specifically about you, Chance, and they've said what a great job you're doing and how much you've improved since last Operation Pegasus Jump, as they track what's going on with the podcast. They're kind of using a year timeline to judge you as a person, and not judge in the worst way, but in the best way. They are getting a sense of a different form of Chance. And so, as Tip stated at the start, you know, like the improvements that you've made in your life, the polish that you have put into your presence, how you hold yourself now as a man, and there's been some incredible advances in the podcast because of all of the work that you've done within yourself, internally, externally, to be just a better person. And so you know that you've improved, but so do a pile of other people. And I think it's important for you to hear that. Of course, it's important for everyone to hear when they're doing better. It's important to be recognized. To some degree, it's important to be validated if you are righteously pursuing betterment. Now, the distinction between validation in a real world setting versus the validation on a social media sense. Now, those are two radically different things that are often distorted. Social media tends to seek validation, whereas Chance, you're just grinding more often than not in the shadows and showing up each time a better person for it. But no one sees the grind. They simply see Chance doing better. Oh, and they also might notice that Chance didn't say today. Tip, give us 15 seconds background on who you are. But, you know, we can talk about that deeper in the podcast. So I think that it's important that observing the world is the topic today. But then the other side of the coin is, as we're observing, we are certainly being observed.
An interesting point to come back to, too, because, like, if we're being observed and we're taking all this information in, how do we interpret that information? What do we put priorities on? Where do we accept information and where do we not? Because there are haters out there, as we've said.
Right. Chance, for me, it's exactly the important thing. And Shaun inferred it there as well, is you being you. That is it. Everybody, I mean, the classic line is, opinions are like arseholes. Everyone's got one. You know what I mean? Simple as that. So you being you and having that, I reckon, a genuine, you know what I mean, just a genuine heart, respectful to, you know, whatever's out there in front of you, life, and those observations you take are genuine, innocent in a way, observations from your, so like, you know, and judgments that you make. I think that's it. That is it. That to me, I haven't found out the meaning of life, but I'm just going, I'm just happy with being that. You know what I mean? Maybe the conditioning that's got me to here, but I love it. And I think becoming an actor as well has made me more aware of that. You know, like, you know, Shaun, you were talking, like removing the blinkers and broadening your horizons. I go, I love it now. I love that I've survived what I wanted to do, to be here on today chatting away to you guys. And I don't want to change or pretend or have any pretense of being anybody else. But I love it. I love life. I love chewing the fat with you guys. We're halfway around the world, about to have your lunch, and I'm well past me tea time.
Well, past your tea time. I love it anytime anybody from the UK area says they have tea that they have to go to. It's just there's something about it. We got a comment here. Dan C jumped in here and said, and being no social media expert, you guys are grinding so hard. The show has made leaps and bounds over last year. It's the same amazing messages, much more professionally viewed. Well, thank you, buddy. That's
see,
there you go. But I do have some questions on this, because I really want to look at this internally as well as externally, because I think the external observations of the world can be kind of low-hanging fruit. We could talk about that all day. We all have experience in it, but the one thing, at least what I've noticed, is that the more I turn inward, the more the external world becomes more understandable, a little bit easier to manage, a little bit easier to develop. So can you guys, at least I've seen these things through mistakes. So when I screw up or I do something wrong, or things don't go the way I plan, it's the reflection afterwards. It's the internal work. It's the looking at inside and like, well, how did I set that up? Why did that go? Why did it actually happen that way? Or what didn't I do that could have led to the success or that I was looking for, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Can you guys think of a time where you did it like wrong? Like really, really wrong. You observed the wrong thing. It did not go the way you thought it was. And then, what did you gain out of that? Shaun, I'm going to hit you first. What do you think?
Sure thing. First, I'd like to say that I observed Tip getting a bit twitchy as someone stalked up on his sniper hide there a couple of minutes ago.
See. The golf clubs. All right.
So, yeah, I have screwed up countless times in respect to reading the room, reading the moment, reading the incident, reading the event, reading the person. You got to screw it up a ton of times. But I want to be clear when I say screw it up, that there is a scale, maybe we'll call it from 1 to 10 of screwing up. Now, I've had some 10s, but generally speaking, I like to hang out in the 5 to 6 range where it's not quite as devastating, but I'm letting things unfold in a way that I know I'm going to bump into some issues that I can work through as the puzzle and learn from them, observe the problem in front of me. So I've been there countless times, and more often than not of my own making, and more often than not, like not consciously choosing to create the problem. I've just been dumb. And so life is a learning journey, man. And the things that I'll screw up today will be far less than the things I would have screwed up when I was 20. And so that's simply just decades of trying to do it better each time. And that's supposed to show up as a more refined sense of the world, a more refined sense of the moment, a better read on the room. Speaking of Dan C., who just made that comment, I met him for the first time just the other day on the drop zone. Walked up to me and said, the old Shaun, he shook his hand, Dan. I was like, Dan, how are you? I didn't recognize him immediately from a social media feed. But I'm sure we'll catch up, as he said. Hey, I want to hang out. We'll chat and all that good stuff, as do I. So I'll get to know more about Dan later. But what I do know about Dan to date, based on a handshake very quickly, and observing him on social media, tracking what we do, interacting with what we do, asking interesting questions, thoughtful questions, complex and deep sometimes. I've noticed that he's in the game, as I like to call it. He's in the game of life. Now, in the game means a ton of things to a ton of people, but to not put too fine of a point on it, I believe there's only 2 games in the world currently. There's the real world game and there's the social media world game. I'm not very good at the social media world game. I'm far better at the real world game. But less people understand that until they meet me in the real world and shake my hand and look me in the eye, or I look them in the eye, and then we get right to it. That's where I love to observe. It just so happens that I now spend some time on social media, so I am having to get better at observing a world that I'm not quite as good at.
If you got any thoughts on any of this?
Oh no, like everything. It's great. I think we're peers and sort of age sort of level, and that we're we are learning, we're harnessing new skills, which we need, well, I need in my new career as well. But for me, there's moments in, you know, what Shaun said there, when you're younger, the amount of faux pas and sort of like, you know, mistakes you made through being maybe not observant, or maybe not, should we say, valuing the sort of fundamentals that are taught to you or you have experienced, you know, and understand the importance of those fundamentals. And for me, it was, we were one of the first troops out into Romania when the wall went down as such. We were in Transylvania, and we were setting up some sort of systems in this gorge in Romania, and I set up this abseil, and I was just testing the system before obviously the guys arrived, and we put them through the sort of like, you know, the training we were doing. And when I set the system up, I never had my gloves with me, which again at the time as well, you don't necessarily, you know, in the military law as such have to have gloves on for rappelling or abseiling down this. But I went down the system. I could have put a Prusik on or something, you know, some sort of safety, but I didn't. I just went with it cack-handed, grabbed one of the lads' mitts and just said, yeah, I'll go down the bottom, set it up, and we'll crack on. And as I went over, I forgot on this particular abseil, it was about 100 feet, and then it was only a smally ledge, and then it was about another 20 foot into a river. And I went off, and there was an overhang, and I lost my brake hand. Instead of having a brake man, instead of having a Prusik on, and blah, 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 all reasons why. Young, dumb, and like I say, what we've done. And I fell about 100 feet, but I pulled my other hand across to get caught, and it jammed in the system. And I landed on a little tuft of grass on my cute little buns, and realized that what looked like bacon stuck to my hands, where the rope had cut through all my muscle and that. So you never trust a man who's got hairy fingers. So I've got bits of elbow skin stuck on my fingers there. So I learned a lesson. You know, the observation of the fundamentals are very, very important. And obviously went through sort of like the board of inquiry and everything else. And I realized that, you know, we had to sort of like rewrite the rules slightly, but it was my fault. I had the knowledge to not do it, but it happened. This was about 30 years ago now. But so it's one of those things you learn from that. I mean, if I was doing that now, I mean, you wouldn't, would you? You wouldn't. It would be such. But when you're young and you're pumping, you just sort of stand back, observe, and be cooler. Life would be so much. You would get so much more gifts. You got to keep that was, but you would get so much more gifts. You were a bit more cooler with it, I think.
I think that's an amazing story, first off. But I've had some troubles on the rappel line as well, just due to something similar. Just going like, yep, I'm good, no problem. Off, and you go off the wall, and you're like, that's probably not the best idea. But I think that's part of it. You bring up a very good point of fundamentals, because the fundamentals that we get taught, especially within the military, are you follow the procedure. The outcome will be this, and the procedure has been built on all of these fundamental mistakes that somebody has done prior.
And it was observed.
And they've been observed, and they've been reiterated on and gone from there. And I just want to kind of dive into these fundamentals. But before we do, I just want to hit this. Lisa Meyer, woohoo, catching you live. Hello from Texas. Good to see you, Lisa. The level of training that we got especially, and I look back to like mine awareness and doing a lot of stuff with explosives. The details matter, right? But when you first get in the military, you get taught that through mundanity or minutia as you think of it at the time, right? How your socks are folded, how your boots are shined, all these little things that are built in that you don't understand later on. How do you guys teach that? How do you guys get those fundamentals into the people that you love, especially your kids, friends, things like that, when they don't have them, without obviously running them through boot camp? Shaun, I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
Well, look, I want to state this, that I got no problems with running a little bit of a boot camp for your kids.
You've got to say that.
Straight up. And I mean, like, that boot camp has never stopped, and it's ebbed and flowed, and it's all with a purpose. And let me demonstrate the evidence of that. So my youngest son is on the drop zone right now. He's going through his 4th year of Operation Pegasus jump. He's got 9 jumps. He's going to be cracking out a couple more today, no doubt. But someone walked up to me this morning before I left the DZ, a different guy, and he said, "Hey, man, you know what I really want to let you know? It is beautiful to watch you and your son together. Like, I can see, like, my son had come over, slipped his arm around me, and he's taller than me, so he's kind of dangling his arm over my shoulder, and he said, 'Hey, Dad, I'm just going over to the jump racks right now. But remember, you've got a podcast in 40 minutes. Now, he did that for 2 reasons. Because he knows that when I get going, like, I want to give it my all. I want to, like, whoever's in front of me, I'm engaging them with maximum velocity. I am in it to win it with them. And so I get very, very in the moment with that person. And time can sometimes slip away from me unless I have, like, I'm mission oriented. So when I'm personally oriented, my boys know that, like, I can let a few minutes go with that person that I should have, like, summed up and moved on to get the other thing done. So my son knows that that's part of me. But the other aspect was he wanted the other person to know that I should probably be moving along. So it was a very nuanced move that the individual that I was standing with observed and noted and actually raised it up as a point of conversation. And so, you know, whatever boot camp my boys have been through, it's created 2 fine young men that are in higher education now, going on towards being a mechanical engineer, one of them, and another on his way to the doctor routine. And I think that whatever my wife predominantly and me to some small degree have done with our kids is created a level of excellence to some degree. Now, that's not their full excellence or their full potential, but running a boot camp, if it creates good kids, then I'm okay with that. It doesn't mean that I'm getting them to do knuckle push-ups the moment that they drop a fork in the kitchen. It just means I'm going to look at them and say, "What's up?" And so boot camps come in many forms. And I think having a keen eye, which I do, and being a good observer of the micro tells, the micro feels, the micro moment. I know my kids as well as anyone can know a kid. I run a boot camp on the physiological level to some degree. Like, I'll look at my boys and say, "Time to go hit the bag," or "Go downstairs, hit the steel," or "What are you doing today?" or "Let's hit the mats," or etc. So that's the physiological aspect, to include, "How's your sleep this last night?" or when did you last eat or drink?" Or, as my boys have to do for me. Again, if I get target locked on having a conversation, 2 days ago, I didn't eat a freaking thing on the DZ because for 8 hours, I was handshaking and talking and never came even remotely close to food. People just kept bringing me over bottles of water because they noted that I hadn't moved more than 50 feet in 8 hours. And so sometimes I don't look after myself as well as I look after others. And so the physiological boot camp, for sure. The psychological boot camp, for sure. The emotional boot camp, for sure. And to some small degree, I don't try to impart my beliefs on my boys, but to some degree, one of those boot camps is spiritual, and not questioning them on their faith or anything like that, but just trying to get them to consider a deeper sense of the world, the spirit of the world, their spirit of themselves, the spirit of all of this freaking magical experience that we're in. If you can see beyond the veneer and think more curiously and deeply about the world. It's truly magical. And until you kind of pick up on that, if you aren't in a boot camp that teaches you the magic of the world, then hop on the internet right now. Stop listening to us. Go somewhere on the internet and look up the magical boot camp of life. Because if you're just grinding away, when I said to Chance, he's grinding in the shadows, but it ain't just the grind. There's magic going on in that moment, as I see it as well, as Chance and I have talked about in the past. Life is a journey for sure, and you'll make it what it is. But as a parent, I do think there's a responsibility to run a physiological, psychological, emotional, and spiritual boot camp for your kids.
That's a great point. And on the boot camp, notice I make my boys do 10 push-ups when they run down the hallway. That's and the funny thing was, because they used to just like sprint up and down the hallways, they'd clip their toes, they'd go into like full-on face plants and like all these things. And I had to put a stop to it. And initially it was, tell them to stop, and then they wouldn't. And then I was like, okay, well now there's going to be repercussions. So now they do 10 push-ups every time they sprint. And guess what? They don't sprint down the hallway anymore. It's pretty simple. Tip, you got any tips, tricks, anything that you did with your kids?
Well, but the thing, listen what Shaun said there, and listen everything, but the most magical words I thought that Shaun said was to have a keen eye. And with that, to have a keen eye with my clan, that's it. My clan's, the two special. They're all grown up now. I've got quite a few grandchildren as well. But my clan it's the keen eye, it's to have an interest and to observe. And like I say, everything we spoke about tonight, it's about observing. And then with that what comes with that observation is an understanding of them and their life. Because what I did find when they came along the clan is that they're all completely different. And it's bonkers. I thought it can't be, but they're so different, and they've grown up that way, and they're absolutely independent and incredible and strong. And did I run a boot camp? I think, because I don't really call things boot camps, do they? Like over here, like we don't. Boot camps is more that side of the pond type thing. For me, I was more like a Victorian dad, you could say. A bit with that little moral compass, which a bit of Catholic guilt in there maybe as well. But that's very much the way I was, purely for the reasons everything Shaun said, to understand what life's about, to have respect for everything in humanity, and to do it, and also to stand up when things have to be stood up for. I think that's important as well. And these are all, you have to have an interest in them and a keen eye, and to observe, and and fingers crossed, because we never know what's going to happen tomorrow. But I'm a happy person, because it seems to have worked.
I like that. It seems to have worked so far. The plan is working. I like that. Then I have a question on that, because you mentioned, I forget you got to stand up for what you believe in at times, and you absolutely do. But where's the line that we draw between observation and action? Because there are times that absolutely you need to act. And as a young man, I acted way too soon, and I didn't observe. As an older guy now, in my 40s, I sometimes observe too much and don't act quickly enough. So I'm wondering, in your guys's, with all your guys' experience, how have you learned to find that line, and like, where is it for you between action, observation? How quickly do you move between those two things? Tip, I'm going to come right back to you. What do you think?
Well, for me, it's quite. I've changed. I've changed as a person from a time, my previous career as a boatneck, as a Marine, through to the person I've become now. I don't think that's been the massive change. I think it's a gradual change. I think age has got a lot to do with it, and things where you observe and you stand up or you react, you become the reaction force to whatever's happening or whatever you observe. When you're younger, I made a lot of mistakes. Maybe my flash to bang was far too short. And I went straight into contact nearly every single time. as I get older, I'm not like that at all. You know what I mean? I'm not. Oh, I was a horrible person when I was young. I wasn't. I was just. It was me. I needed that. I needed that life experience to be who I am. But now, as I come to this stage with the responsibilities of as a person my age has, and those things, I really, really worry, and I worry about, especially like Shaun, you got young sons as well, that observation and you with that moral compass in, you've got to stand up and do things because of the volatility and, of life. And I think what seems to be, maybe it's my changing head, there seems to be that we don't seem to value other people's lives as much as when we did when I was younger, which is weird because I was more volatile when I was younger. Whereas nowadays, with knife crime in the UK and all over the world and different other things and gun crime and all this sort of stuff, you're just going, when they do stand up, what if they're the person that's, been stabbed or the person that's been shot? And what an unbelievably sad loss to humanity that would be. Whereas when I was young, I wouldn't have had second thoughts about standing up, and reacting. It's weird. Maybe I've changed, and maybe I'm the same as you, like Chance, that maybe, am I delaying too long? Maybe I should I? You know what I mean? But there are certain things that you must admit, no matter what, I would sacrifice myself instantly. You know what I mean? And I would do that, purely from that moral compass. But it's just nowadays, I don't value me. I'm sort of like, I'm sort of going, I don't care about me, but I do care about the people I love. And if they've done a similar thing, I mean, it's a weird one. I've changed a bit. I mean, got more responsibility.
I totally understand what you're saying. I think that's why I brought the question up, because it's a pretty hard line to find, and it becomes very situationally dependent on like today or tomorrow or what's going on, and the ability to observe in the moment becomes kind of more important. Shaun, what do you got?
Perhaps like Tip, I had quite a rapid flash to bang myself when I was pretty young. And by pretty young, I mean like through my 20s and 30s, I was pretty fast to flash to bang. And to some degree, I still am. But I want to make perhaps an important distinguishing point, and that is, I believe it's better to be fast, flash to bang in your youth as a learning model or as a tool to better understand how to get better at it or how to move beyond flash to bang, so that you can then start kind of slowing things down a little bit. And you can start engaging in a conversation or deconflicting or changing the tone in the atmosphere, or to some degree, as you get later in life, you can, I'm going to use a term that is controversial, but I'm using it in a positive way. Now, and quite for some time, I manipulate the moment. I will manipulate the potential problem to turn it around into a more positive moment. And that's through probably showing up as a young man as the problem and understanding myself as the problem for the too fast flash to bang, learning how to do it better over time, so that now I have context as to, well, I can't keep doing that. I've got to get better, moving towards this. Now I feel more like far more of a diplomat today versus when I was in my 20s. In my 20s, I was just basically trying to make holes through things. And whether that was paper or the guy who was wagging his finger at me, either way, they were both going to get it. And so that ain't me now. But it is perhaps also worth saying that because I moved through my youth, maybe not volatile, but very fast to action, even fast to throw a fist. Because I understand that world, I now appreciate the more diplomatic approach that I take to the world. So without being this, I wouldn't fully appreciate what I am right now. And I much prefer myself now versus the flash to bang person that I was when I was a kid. And so it's nice to have understood the spectrum that I've moved through, but also realize as an older diplomat, I still have a bit of flash to bang in my rear pocket that I can pull out anytime, just in case, which is different than someone who was raised as a diplomat and has never understood what flash to bang means. Now they're, and I'll say it'll be controversial as well, now they're a bit more of a one-dimensional person to me. Now they are a diplomat without an understanding of velocity or perhaps that flash to bangness. So it gives more of a skewed perspective on how the world turns and why there's an actual requirement for diplomacy in the moment.
I wonder if that has to do with the fact, like, being a good diplomat would, in my mind, require you to have a really good understanding of what the consequences are of perhaps failure or whatever that is, and being able to pull from that back pocket, as you say, to be able to, like, whew, I still have my flash to bang. I still have that, the ability to become violent. I think this is also why martial arts is such a great skill for young kids as well, is that the consequences seem perhaps less dire because you know that you can handle them if it does go south. Whereas, so the diplomacy route is more desirable, but if it needs to go south, well, okay, let it go south and I'll be okay. Versus just having the diplomacy. I was talking with a friend of mine outside of the dojo the other day. He's interested in firearms and he's never shot guns before, and he was just like, oh, I'm kind of curious and I'd love to go to the range, and it's just something that I would like to do. And I was like, that's great, you should absolutely come out, we can teach you about all these things. And he was asking me some really informed questions about the firearm community here in Canada. And through that conversation, I started to observe in him a change in the moment of his, like, oh, okay, he was updating his profile of what it was to be a firearms owner. He was updating his information about the laws that I was engaging him with, all these things. But he had no understanding of what violence really is. It's also one of the reasons why he started taking martial arts, right? So he was updating his observations through what that was like, but his diplomatic style would not have been as effective as someone perhaps with your skill level, at least in my mind here. I do have some other questions that are kind of a bit more reflective, but I want to see if you guys have any of your thoughts on what I just said.
I've got a question back to you guys.
Hit it.
Because I gave a big spiel there. It was a bit too long. I'm going to synthesize it down to a simple question to you. Would you trust a diplomat that's never been punched in the face? Part two of the question is, and how recently would they have had to have been punched in the face to make it a valid trustworthiness?
That's a dang good question. Tip, what do you got?
I'm very, very sorry. I don't do politics. I mean, diplomacy, politicians. I'm not. And again, remember that the word apathetic. I'm not. It's not apathy, but I don't. For me, it's not about politicians. It's about people. It's about people that I've shared time with, and society and social and humanity and with another. That's it. To measure on somebody, I can't, because I've met some wonderful diplomats, as in, and people, this is Irish diplomats as well, who are complete pacifists, who have never, ever thrown a punch in their life, but their intellect and their passive and their peaceful nature are just magical. And I think they're needed so much in that diplomatic field. Yeah, I have met, and I've got friends who are politicians, who are, former, should we say, front end of everything we've ever done, and they're still extremely good at diplomacy. So there's a bit of a yin and yang there. I think it's important to have that completely, I'd say even near, like a what do you call it? Not Hindu, like a Hare Krishna type feeling, to have that along with a diplomat that has that, the flash to bang. I really think it's so important. You know what I mean? So I couldn't judge it. I couldn't. That's where I would have to have it.
So a quick, not a retort, but a quick follow-on question, because much like yourself, Tip, and that is literally one of our rules over here: no race, religion, politics, or swearing. Which, by the way, you've already broke one of those rules when you said
Sorry.
So,
you were just holding me.
And I
that.
just repeated it. So, I should have prefaced my question with, I have zero interest in politics, like none. But your answer was fantastic, because as you were saying that, it reminded me, I believe it is the Irish Prime Minister. He's often got his dog with him, no?
The president.
Yeah, sorry, the president.
He looks like a character from Lord of the Rings.
He surely does. Dude, you beat me to it. I was going to describe him as such. Someone from the Lord of the Rings with his dog is representing the country. And man, like, I don't know the guy from Adam. I know nothing about him. All I know is this, that I've seen a few clips of him doing interviews in front of news members or some random photos. And again, I don't even know his name, but what I do feel about him is he feels like a good guy. He feels like he's a peaceful man to some degree. Now, I don't know why I feel that. He could be quite the opposite. But when I see an image of him, he just feels like almost a jovial hobbit out of the Lord of the Rings. And so I could be way off base, but I appreciate your answer, Tip, because absolutely there is a mandatory requirement for that yin and yang. And now I'm not going to make it a political comment, the yin and yang of life. You need friends who are, the Irish president with his dog, and you need friends who have got a bayonet in their teeth, and that context between the two. And of course, those two things that I just described can be a single person, but having that yin and yang context is critical.
I agree. And I don't know the guy, but I'm picturing a hobbit. Is that pretty accurate?
Well, I'd say, I remember it's all about observing. So I'm saying, I love him. I don't, like, I'm not saying as in, I don't, but I love it just as a human being. But as a character, because I'm an actor, he's awesome. He's awesome. You could have him in any film, any stage production, and he's just a character. And that would be from either Yoda through to a Lord of the Rings character.
I love it. This is it's interesting, but to the point of the question, I think also, Tip, is the fact that you answered it very diplomatically, right? You gave a very kind of, I do understand this, and I do see it from this side, and I, again, we're not going to get into the political aspect of it, but the ability to be diplomatic is the ability to negotiate. It's the ability to empathize. It's the ability to think things through. It's the ability to observe. It's all these things put together that allows someone to be a diplomat professionally, but to be a diplomatic person, I think, is also a skill set that most people gain through, as Shaun said, we got a dagger in your teeth doing those things. But the critical piece is, and I want to just touch on this because Shaun and we were talking about this the other day about getting guests for the show, which is, it's great to have all the special forces dudes from down the States. It's good to have the dudes from the Aussies and everyone around. But we need to have more people that they're ass kickers professionally, or ass kickers personally, or ass kickers that are not the dudes with the knife in their teeth, but they are the guys that look like hobbits. But they do that at a professional level, if that makes sense. And I think this is a critical point, is that if you're going to have a circle of people that are high performers, let's say, that doesn't mean always physically high performers. Sometimes that could be mentally high performers, people who are big into meditation, or that are yogis, or that are whatever within your circle that you can then call on and try to build your own experience through observation of them. At least that's where I'm coming from. Tip, you got any thoughts on any of that?
Oh, no, definitely. I was thinking about, obviously, nothing for maybe chat, just obviously because I know a lot of people have got that background and are now into that more. Yeah, I mean, like Shaun said, they've broadened their horizons now, and they live in that world through, cold water immersion, through meditation, through, experiencing the mountains, isolation and that. And they're incredible, but they all come from from like us. You know what I mean? They all come from our backgrounds, but they've obviously, they've broadened their horizons so much so that they are seeking the meaning of life in a lot of respects, but they've got a smile on their face where that it could be the other way, that they maybe followed a different path where they would be struggling with their own mental well-being, but they've broadened and they've opened their eyes, and again, some of these things that I don't think because I think you have to tune in and become part of to understand and revere them, have some reverence for it as well, to fully appreciate it. And I haven't, but these friends that I have truly have got that reverence and understand it. And if they can, in some way impart onto us that what it is, I think it's for the benefit of all, really.
This is the way I feel about jiu-jitsu as well. Shaun,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Shaun, you got any thoughts?
Well, I think that something that Tip said there is fairly critical in respect to his circle of friends or the influences that he has wrapped around him or who he hangs with, that they are to some degree inspiring him in their ability to see the world as they see it and enjoy how they see it. It makes me want to just raise a point here for anyone who's listening to this now or later. If you find yourself on a pretty regular basis an angry person, you're unhealthy. And that doesn't mean that you can't do enough chin-ups on the chin-up bar. It doesn't mean that you're obese. It's got nothing to do with that. Though those can be contributing factors, your physiological health, not getting enough sleep, not eating well, and all of that good stuff. But if you're angry on a regular basis, and there's lots of reasons to be angry about, but if you're angry about all of them, chances are you're an unhealthy person. And generally speaking, that's mental health rather than just physiological health. Of course, these things are all tied together. And so the ability to see people in your life, in your circle, that are less angry than you is a sign that you should be heading in that direction towards that group of friends. You should be engaging more and more and more in people who are less and less and less angry until you find yourself at a point where, I only know Tip through the podcast and through following his social media. And then, of course, his freaking crack-a-lack amazing film that came out recently. So that's what I know of Tip. We've never shook hands. We've never shared a Guinness. We've never done any of that. But I do know this. Anytime I've observed Tip, he's always had a great vibe, even in the movie. And the movie isn't all unicorns and rainbows.
No,
but what it is not. But what I understand about the movie is the intent behind it, the reason for it, the spirit behind it. And so, though the movie isn't, it's certainly not a comedy, but in essence, it brought me joy watching it because I could see the movie for what it was, but I could feel the movie for what its intent was. And though there's some tough moments in the movie for anyone who views it, it's not that it's challenging. It's just that it's to some degree reasonably raw and reasonably real that, you kind of need to sit down, allocate enough time to watch the entire movie so that from the start to the finish, you're on a journey that will have you doing this. But the center line that runs through this center line, as I see it, is the spirit behind the movie. So everything that I've seen from Tip from day one till now has always been cool in his spirit, has always been positive in his projection forward into the future, has always been righteous in his intent. And so these kind of things to me, we'll call it again, the invisible world, the unobserved world, the beyond the veneer of the world, that's what I'm fascinated by. So more often than not, if I see a person like Tip in the real world or on a digital world, I am always looking for the real person behind the veneer person. And I love seeing the fact that Tip, as we see him right now, we're having a bit of fun. We're on a fairly serious subject to some degree at times, but we're still enjoying the moment. To me, that's what Tip represents, is a guy who is moving through life with good intent, righteous direction, but still has that je ne sais quoi, still has that sparkle of life, is still intrigued by the magic of the moment, and hasn't lost his way in the disenfranchised or the bitterness or the anguish or the anxiety of the world all around him and his past and what it could have been if he told himself a different story. It could be a way different Tip in front of us right now if he would have gone this direction in his mind instead of this direction in his mind. So I think it's an important aspect of the conversation.
I 100% agree, and I want to dive right into it. Tip, what was that? Was there a fork in the road, or was it like many forks in the road, or was it more of a gradual?
I think for me, it wasn't a fork in the road. It's just that internal being, not in your head. I think from your heart, where you have to follow that heart. And again, I think we've spoken about this before in previous things. It's you follow your heart, but you've got to do your homework. You've got to do your sums before you follow that heart. But you've got to follow your heart. Whatever you want to do and anything in life, you've got to follow with that magical compass pointing you towards. But you've got to do your sums, and you've got to realize the magical compass will always give you something that's it's light. It's a bit like, that it's there in the door, the magical compass. But that's your magical compass. Somebody else won't see that, but you see it. But for you to get there, if it was easy, you'd be trying to fight everyone at the door to get there, wouldn't you? But it isn't easy. So you have to do your sums and do your homework. And that means, and you'll achieve it. And like I say, it's, when it comes, when you see people that, like the guys that do the loops and the bikes, that do the right, bike, do loops, like 5 like loops on a dirt bike, land on and just speed off and going, who's the first person that done that? The first person that base jumped. Who was the first person that done that? All these things that I love life, and I do things, and I push the the limits on what I do. Maybe not as much as because I'm older now and more contented in life, but I still push the boundaries. You push the boundaries, but I know that the boundaries I'm pushing, it's weird, but the boundaries I'm pushing, but I know other human beings have pushed those boundaries and done similar things. Everyone's journey is unique, but it's very similar in a lot of aspects because we're human beings. We're all human beings. And it's just, and there's challenges and everything. So I think you've got to follow your heart, do your sums, and don't give up. And believe me, we all know this. There's so many variables in life, and this isn't swearing, by the way, they put little turd burgers in front of you and make you chew on them, don't you? And you're going, ugh, and they taste like shit, don't they? But they're honking, and that's your blockages. And you're going, sometimes you'll go, no, I ain't eating that shit burger. I'll go back this way. And if you do that, it ain't going to happen. You've got to go, right, cheers for that little turd burger. Can I have some little turd nuggets the next time? Eat those and crack on with it and move through. You've got to, and it's not a literal effect, it's a metaphoric sort of thing. But you've got to go through all the challenges or all the obstacles, the sleeping policemen that put in front of you. You ride through them. And be persistent, be stubborn, do your sums, and don't give up. And that's it.
Yeah, don't give up, I think, is that critical piece. But I also want to add a little question in here in terms of, for me at least, one of the things that I needed to do in order to kind of eat those crab sandwiches, for
poo burgers.
It takes some stillness. It takes some time to process. And initially, when that first thing is dropped in front of your face, it takes a little.
It's all over. It's all over.
It's, oh my God, the world's gonna end, right? But over time, you start to realize, oh, okay, well, I could take I could take a bite or two or whatever. I have to get through it in order to move on, right? But I think there's a point in this that requires some discussion. In that, for me at least, stillness was part of it. I had to stop and take the time to understand what I was doing and why I was doing it and where that was coming from and da 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 da. And you mentioned sniper school a little while ago, and Shaun being a former sniper, and we've talked about, you know, being able to just be still for a little while to observe. And I'm wondering how you guys see that in terms of what's required of stillness in observation. And Shaun, I'm going to come to you on this one first. What do you think?
Sure. So on the honkin' bad sandwich, I would just say this, that, you know, we've all had to eat them. And that first one certainly is unpalatable. But what we all have to learn in life is to reframe these moments. And so I'll just use a goofy little analogy. You know, the sandwich has to be eaten, but you might as well make it fancy and cut off the crusts. Now you're eating the crustless sandwich, which is a bit poncy, but it's acceptable. And perhaps you can slide some cucumber slices in there as well to really fancy boy it up. But either way, you got to reframe that sandwich because it's got to get eaten. And inevitably, those sandwiches start looking different and kind of tasting different. And, you know, I'm not saying it's something that anyone should relish, but it's certainly something that you have to learn maybe to pour relish on to reframe that moment. So I'll get to your question, Chance, on being a sniper and observing the world. How I used to, initially when I met my wife, and this is going back over 2 decades ago, we were newly-ish married, and we were in Spain on our honeymoon, and we're walking through a massive cathedral. We both love history, both love art, architecture. We love culture as well as many things. And so as we were walking through it, within a split second of walking into this place, I dialed into it. I felt the vibe. My Mark 1 eyeballs took in everything. I rapidly started creating patterns. And I noticed some things that were almost out of place in my pattern. And I just made a casual observation about, oh, isn't that interesting? And my wife looked at it and she said, well, how did you see that? Like, how does anyone see that? And I said, well, dear, I guess I probably spent more time than most looking at things through a 10-power scope. And so I didn't build out that story at all. No need to. But, you know, effectively what that represents is I have had to observe humans for long periods of time through a scope, which magnifies the moment to a degree where you do pick up the minutia of things. And as you're looking at the minutia, the done up button or the undone button, whatever the case is, it's my job to form the pattern. But as I'm doing that, it's also my job to be still in the moment. I have to accept the bandwidth. I have to accept the data through my scope, through my empathy, through my feel of the world, how the wind is, the rain on my cheek. I have to accept all of this bandwidth almost from a neutral perspective, with a clear lens, as it were, rather than sullying that lens with my own personal nonsense. So in effect, learning to be a sniper to some degree is a form of Buddhist meditation. And I know that's a long stretch. That's a bit of a reach, but it's probably my first time in my life, as I was in the recon world, was where I started to almost disappear in the moment, dissolve my ego, become non-existent in order to understand this world around me, the bandwidth that I needed to absorb to truly understand the essence of what was in front of me and around me. That's a bit of a stretch to say that as a young sniper, I started understanding meditation.
Tip, you got any thoughts on this?
It's weird because I mean, the story that Shaun said, it's incredible, like, you know, and his sniper training as well. Like, you know, it's you know, that and the world in reconnaissance, the world of reconnaissance, and surveillance and, you know, everything else. It's all about observation, you know, and listen, but even like looking through a sniper scope, then you have to obviously take your eyes off and open and look at the bigger area, whether through binoculars or something else to get a wider spread, because you've got the focus. You still got to have either working with you're in a sniper pair, somebody covering, you know, the other, you know, your broader things. But for me, it's because I grew up on that, and I love looking at life and looking at, that's this stage. What's the second stage? Where are they going to move on to? Where this are? And I put it down to the analogy I have is riding a motorbike rather than riding a car. When you're a biker and you ride a bike, you're always thinking you're taller, but you're always looking forward. And you have to, even though you've got your helmet on, you're always looking in the eyes of people coming out. You're thinking out there, looking at cars coming around corners and things out there. As a biker, you have to you know, your observation skills are far more up there than you are in a car. So it's not only like, you know, the reconnaissance world, but in normal life, I think it's just biking skills, you know, reading the road. What, you know, similar to being a sniper, reading the world, if it's wet, you know, if it's cold, what's this here, what's the viz going to be like for that driver pulling out, what, you know, cars, there's, you know, you when I'm riding a bike, you ride along as if you're on a patrol, because you're looking forward all the time at various sort of like dangers that are ahead, which is weird. In a car, I don't. I do. I'm a careful driver, but it's not the same. I'm not as aware as when I'm riding a bike. And I think observation in life, my analogy is more riding a motorbike and looking for those little, should we say, those little like those little burgers we were talking about, or those threats just in front of life. You've got to do that and just always aim off and change your direction, or you know, or hit them head on, but be wary of them. So I think it's observation, and it's an important thing, I think.
I agree, and I think it lends itself very much to when I'm on the back of a horse, in the fact that you have to be physically still while aware, but you have to because if you're not physically still, then that affects the animal, right? So if I'm agitated and I'm on the back and I start throwing my head around, then the animal will start moving. As I would imagine, I don't ride motorcycles, but I imagine like if I started throwing my body around on the road, you're
chance
get tossed.
You said that the horse. I love horses, but I know as soon as when you're riding a horse and especially it's yours, or you've got a close relationship with that beast and you're doing it. I love horses, and they suss you out. They know more. They're so switched on and savvy. They're incredible. So like that, I completely get it. So with a horse, that's even better, because you've got to share that with your horse, because the horse has got to have it as well. And I like that. I like that even more than the motorbike.
There you go. I love it. But
I want to play with that though.
Yep,
so Tip, you're like reading my mind from just about a half a year ago. We were in Chiang Mai up in northern Thailand.
I've seen your posts actually.
Yeah, right on. Thank you. So funnily enough, as you just described, almost identically went through my mind one day in Chiang Mai. What I did was, on the side of a road, on a bit of a sweeping corner, I kind of shunted myself off into almost a hedgerow hide so that I could watch the scooter riders, which is prolific throughout Chiang Mai. It's rare that you see a car sometimes, just because there's so many scooters. But as I was in my little hide taking my shots, not maybe every scooter, but I'll say easily 50% of the scooters that swept around that corner, as they were sweeping around, bam, they'd lock straight onto me. They'd see me, and no car drivers would. And so they had their heads on a swivel. And I do believe it's threat rather than a scooter gives you magical powers. Because if you're on a little scooter, you are now more exposed to risk, danger, etc., particularly over in Thailand. It's actually called a Thailand tattoo. There's so many tourists that go down and kind of on their scooters. They're scooting along for 100 feet and presto changeo, where's the emerge? So, there's people on scooters in certain countries, and I've seen it from Vietnam 20 plus years ago right through to just last year, head on a swivel for threat. And for real, some of these scooter riders in Chiang Mai were picking me up faster than trained infanteers. And so it is truly a result of their environment that is creating this ability to not only be aware in the moment, but also, as you stated, Tip, that almost 3 to 4 seconds in the future predictability of the threat matrix as to, is that car going to come out while I'm on my scooter? So that is an interesting aspect as to why is that. I do believe it's threat matrix oriented versus the car. Now, on the horse, of course, as you said, Chance, horses do feel our intent much better than some humans do. And so the moment that you've got your head on the swivel on the horse, like you're getting a bit anxious, a bit antsy, a bit jazz hands, the horse responds to that, and sometimes not always favorably. And so that feedback loop that you're getting from the horse is the same as that feedback loop you're getting as you walk through a shopping mall. If you're unaware of the feedback loop, if you aren't reading the shopping mall, if you aren't reading this moment, then you are acting in a non-interactive way. You're simply kind of not forcing your way through life, but you're not observant enough to interact with life. And so the interaction of life, the more deeper you can read it, the more complex you can interact with it, or perhaps nuanced you can interact with it, the richer your life is. So I would dare say this, that the scooter riders are living a richer life to some degree than the person who's driving the Rolls Royce right next to them.
So what do you think clouds it? Like, when I'm in a car, I act very much like I would on a horse when I'm driving. I find I'm always looking at the other drivers, as you described, Tip, because I don't want to get into a wreck. That's not a fun thing. But what do you think, for most people, clouds the observational world? Like, do you think it's just a skill gap, or perhaps ego, emotion? What do you think that the phone?
That's what clouds people's ability to, and it's like everything that Shaun said there, and you were saying as well, chances that it's focus in it. You focus in life, but you could focus in your day-to-day life full on, and that would be exhausting, wouldn't it? You know, that bang, meticulous, observe. When you step back from it, and you maybe train yourself or you don't, but you do observe, you put that away. And that, honestly, it's, if you're in Canada or anywhere here, if I just sat on a park bench and just watch people walk past, how many of them would be on their phone or looking at the phone as they're walking? And you've got like birds, sheep, and you've got like nature, you've got this, you've got wonders of all around the place. But they're already in that tunnel. You know what I mean? And this is when they're outside. This isn't when they're in front of a computer screen or, you know, things. So I honestly think that these fog, you know, or put a mist in front of what observation of life we have.
Do you think that it extends beyond the phone itself? Like, because there's lots of people I know that spend a lot of time on their phones, and when they put their phones down, they're still cloudy, right? They're just not really as interactive as you could. But I think that might, I'm digging this. Shaun, what do you got?
Well, I think the bigger the truck, the less the threat. The smaller the scooter, the bigger the threat. And so if you've now got an F-350 big old diesel blow-in truck, and now you can be on 2 phones, big deal. I'm going to run over a scooter and I'm not even going to feel it. It won't even dent my bumper. And so the sense of safety in a bigger vehicle is amplified, whereas on a scooter, it is not. And so the circumstances as such in North America is the example. People can afford to be driving big old trucks so that they're quote unquote safer. But in Thailand, that is not the case. And so the population in Chiang Mai, as an example, has had to learn how to be safer on a road by paying more attention. And so, as it turns out, their ability to focus on the moment, focus where they're at, focus on the intent of what they're doing, has enriched their life to such a degree that like Tip said, it can be fatiguing to always be focused, always on point. But I think Tip will agree that inevitably, if you spend a lifetime of doing this, then the focus aspect simply occurs and it's less heavy lift. It's not as onerous. It's not as draining to observe the world all the time with a particular focus that you can ebb and flow. But the focus is enriching enough that you can enjoy the magic of the world. So again, I think it simply comes down to a misdirected sense of safety in the moment.
It almost sounds like the ability to focus becomes, it's an efficiency matter, right? Like I become more efficient at being focused over time as I live that life. Because I remember walking, the sands of Afghanistan looking for IEDs, and like the amount of focus that you have to put into that, it is exhausting. You can only be on point looking that hard for so long, especially in the heat there. But you do gain efficiencies where you no longer have to focus so hard to do it. It just starts to happen naturally. But I think it is more of an efficiency thing because you have more time, you have more training, you have more skill or experience, I guess, to do it well. Successfully, at least in my case, because nothing blew up in my way. But do you think it has to do with efficiencies, or is it just a skill, like skill gaining tip? What do you think?
No, for me, everything you said there is bang on. But focus and living your life with that, and being observing and understanding what's in front of your eyes, the depth of it as well. It's like training. It's like keeping yourself fit. It's like anything. You do it more and more, repetition. It's your matter of fact, it's your MO, your modus operandi, it's your SOP. It's the way you operate. That makes it, you're not, that even like you said there, Chance, when you're on ops, initially it's draining because you are, that first time you're on task, it is sucking everything out of you because you are meticulous, because you know that the violence that could be prosecuted very shortly against you in an instant, and you'll not even know about it, is going to happen, or could possibly happen. But when you become more, you've got that rhythm and the repetition, and the longer you do it successfully, then you get it. But as well as anyone else doing that job, you've got to be on point. So it's repetition. It gets easier because you own it, and the muscle memory and your practice has made it that way. And I think because I think subconsciously we've done it through our training, and we've got this stage in life now where we do observe. And I think because I've changed quite a bit, I observe things in a very different light, and a quite wonderful light. But I know how to do it now, and it doesn't drain me because I've had this life experience that makes it so much more enjoyable, let's say.
Yeah, and you get to see way more when you actually take the time to see what's out there. Shaun, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'd just like to throw out that the draining aspect of things can sometimes come from that cognitive dissonance of trying to live a false avatar while not being able to deliver on that false avatar. So as an example within the podcast, and I'm not suggesting this has happened, but if a podcast guest showed up and they're now going to deliver a performance that isn't authentic to them for 2 hours, that's draining. But Tip is an example. I can see Tip and he's not sweating bullets right now. He's in his zone. He's in his Tip zone. He's being Tip. And so
pull up a soundbite.
That's right. Grab a big old honkin' sandwich. Here comes Tip. So I would just say that this shouldn't be draining for Tip. In fact, it should be invigorating to some degree at certain points in the podcast. And then after the fact, I suspect Tip will be, it'll be a warm hug of goodness because he's in it with us right now, delivering his best Tipness. And perhaps he couldn't have done that as a young man, but now he's able to because he's comfortable with who he is. He understands more authentically at his core Tip. And so I believe that comes through life experiences, of course. It certainly is related to the service careers that we've lived. But I really do believe that acting has been fairly critical to Tip's life, in the sense of he stepped out of the military world to some degree, entered into a brand new world that he had to, with a curious mind, explore, discover who he was in it, find his place, but then not just find his place as a leader, and then find his place as an inspirer, and then to some degree be a poster boy within that sphere. And I know that sounds crazy to say that Tip, in my mind, at the very least, is a bit of a poster boy in this aspect of his life now. But it's true. It's true, man. And Tip, I hope you can accept that is to some degree a certain perception or a certain reality that I have about you. Is your career and where you are now is just a glorious story to me. Your ability to be in this moment and still relay your life tales with a certain sparkle, the gift of the gab storytelling that is authentically who you are, but being super cool about it. I believe that if you can be yourself in a podcast and simply enjoy the moment without overreaching, over trying, over performing, trying to be something that you're not, that's where it can get a bit draining. And so we do have guests that say on a fairly regular basis, wow, that was great. That was amazing. The first show, wow, but I feel really drained right now. And it is more often than not, it's not that they're being inauthentic. It's just that they're trying super duper hard. Like they are just giving it their absolute best. They're almost above and beyond the call of duty in the moment. And in that extra effort, and I'm not saying it's inauthentic because it's righteous, but in that extra effort, it is that little bit of maybe an extra 10% that I believe is the draining part. It took me a long time to figure this out in podcasting, but right now I feel like I'm not a bad stage actor, in the sense of I don't feel like I'm acting. I'm simply being me. I don't know what I'm going to say next, but I think it'll be okay. And so that's how I try to live podcasts right now. And by the end of this, I won't feel drained at all, but that's not how it started for me. So in all things in life, it takes reps. It takes screw ups. It takes derailing yourself from time to time to get back on track, modulate the express train, and then just settle into the moment and just try to be your true self.
That, you know, it's so hard to do that when you've never taken the time to observe what your true self is. But to your point, I think that with our backgrounds within the military, you have to learn who that is at some point, and that takes some screw ups, takes some reps, takes some good things, takes some bad things. Like you have to experience the gambit of life to really know who you are, or to understand who you are in those stressful, difficult times too, because that's a big part of it. Now, we are getting close to time here, and I just want to ask you guys this one last question, and then we can probably do some final thoughts and think about it, and then shut it down for the afternoon. What would you challenge society with? The people watching, people are going to watch later, all this stuff. What would you challenge them with when it comes to paying closer attention, or to observing their world around them, or to observing the world within themselves, or whatever? How would you challenge them to be a better observer? What do you think, Tip?
For me, it's, in a way, I sort of knew what you were going to say there, and I quite welcomed it, because I think it's lovely, and I think it goes to everything we spoke about tonight. Is just that you sit in that park bench, anyone sit in that park bench and look at the world that it passes in front of you. Obviously, preferably in a place where there's human beings as well, because we can sit in a park bench in the upper mountain somewhere, and you have a very different angle of life. But sit somewhere where there's loads of humanity in front of you, and I'd say, part of that selection process, look at people that are, should we say, far more vulnerable than you, or maybe not as well off as you, or some of your veteran buddies that maybe are missing limbs or suffering from mental health, and observe that, see what it's about, and then realize how very, very lucky and blessed you are not to be living in their world, and be respectful towards those people and the challenges they have. That's what I think.
Beautiful. I love it. Shaun, what do you think?
Well, just to maybe build off a little bit about what Tip just said, I think that, yeah, it is good to contextualize your life as to how fortunate you are. And if you're seeing a veteran like I have when we're this morning, and I'll go back there again as soon as we're finished, there's veterans on the DZ right now that are missing limbs. And I challenge anyone to consider life in this way. How is it that they're happier than you are? Why is that individual who at surface glance or at that instant judgment, how are they doing better in life than you are? And they might very well be, because sometimes in our luxury, in our comfort, in our day-to-day minutia, we lose track of the challenges that other people face. We think that our challenges are the only challenges that have to be focused on, when in fact you can deal with your own challenges sometimes more expeditiously and more effectively by focusing your concerns on others. Help someone else out to help yourself. Or another way to put it is, as you're viewing that veteran with a missing limb, ask yourself, why did they appear to have a better aura or a better joyfulness about life, or that je ne sais quoi? Why do they have it and you don't? And so life can be viewed as a center of the universe aspect, as Tip started off the conversation with at the beginning of the podcast to some degree. Why is it that humans focus on themselves as the center of the universe, when in effect, the universe that surrounds us is really a result of what we put out is what we get back? So I love the idea of looking around to see how you can help, how you can mentor, how you can lead, how you can frickin' go take someone a coffee rather than having them bring you a coffee. Get involved in the game of being helpful rather than regularly expecting help.
That's a great point as well. I was thinking about taking the time, because all of these, like, to observe takes time. To sit on a park bench is going to require you to be still for a certain amount of time and just watch. And I think it's such a useful thing to do, yet most people will not take the time. And whether that is through observation of the world, or it's through observation of their diet, or their observation of their social media use, but it requires time. If you're going to do a time audit on your life, well, guess what? That's going to take a little bit of time to write out the sheet and do all the note taking, all these things. You have to pay into it, and it's going to take some time. So absolutely make the time. Don't just take it, make the time to do it, because I think that is extremely important when observing anything. And that we're just about at 2 hours here, so I want to get some final thoughts. Anything still in the back of your brains bubbling about observing, or anything that anybody that's watching could do to better observe the world? What do you think, Tip?
I'm just in there with a big smile on my face thinking, I'm glad to see you two horrible people again, you two horrible creatures again. It's lovely, actually. It's been a while. So for anybody that's out there watching it, it's just listen to the collective, listen to your podcast. They're great fun. They're very positive. I love it. I've got to always have a good 2 hours with you guys, and I just love it. It just helps, doesn't it? It just helps, makes life nice. I like it. Life's wonderful anyway, but it's a nice little bit of icing on the cake for me.
Nice.
Thank you, gentlemen.
It's icing on the cake for me too. Shaun, what about yourself? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Tip. I look forward to seeing Tip. I really do. And if we have too much of a Tip gap, it's problematic. So it almost moves towards honking. So
Honking.
I love getting to spend time with you, Tip. And here's maybe the way I'll wrap it up is the reason that I appreciate spending time with you is because I've spent a lot of time observing the world, better understanding what I like. And so life is a refining process. You're supposed to start understanding towards the back end of your life as to what kind of a life you want to live, how you enjoy doing things, what you look forward to in the real time. And so I've relished this podcast because I know it's inevitably going to come to an end. And then all I have to do as I'm riding my scooter down the road is start looking for when Tip is going to pop out next. So that is life, man. Engage in the journey of seeking to absorb it all as much as you can through observation, but always keep an eye to the future to some degree as to the joy that's just coming around the corner.
That is a beautiful point. I don't really have anything to add except for the more we observe the world, the better we understand it. So I would say start observing. If you're not already, start observing. And as we all continue to learn, build, and grow, we'll see y'all next week. Chimo. Thanks everybody for watching and being part of the collective. If this has sparked any thoughts or resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us grow and keeps the conversation going. We'll see y'all next time.